Hello, this is Judy, and for the next hour, I will be reading from the August 10th, 2026 issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. I will do my best to pronounce all names and words correctly, yet please forgive me if I do not. And here's our first article. It's under real estate. And the title is Toronto to build its first public school in the base of a rental tower where kids can ride the elevator to class. And this article is written by Sadine Mohsen, Mohsen, who is a staff reporter. Toronto is moving forward with plans for a new residential development near the grounds of the old Ontario Science Centre that will feature the city's first public school at the bottom of a rental apartment tower. The project to be built on city land at 770 Don Mills Road in Flemington Park will see 1,254 rental units and 3 towers. It will include below market housing for families and parents, can ride the elevator to drop off their kids off at a brand new Toronto District School Board TDSB elementary school. Residents and experts say it's a needed addition to Flemington Park as the already dense neighborhood continues to grow with the opening of the Eagleton Crossroad LTR and other housing projects at a time when enrollment pressures are putting a strain on Toronto schools. It would be Toronto's first public podium school on city-owned land following a change in plans that saw a school drop from the base of a residential tower in the Sugar Wharf project near the city's waterfront. The idea of a new school mixed with affordable housing is a welcome one to Dee Battaglia, and that's Battaglia, and other parents in Flemington Park. If we build up instead of out, we could use that space for more parks and community gardens, Battaglia said. I think it's good as long as it's for everyone. Battaglia describes the daycare classroom of her 4-year-old daughter, Freya, as overcrowded with too many kids for one teacher. Whenever Battaglia tries to sign Freya up for swimming classes at a nearby Flemington Park pool, they're often put on the waiting list. Since moving to the neighborhood nearly 18 months ago, Battaglia said they have noticed jam-packed roads and new families moving into the area. Flemington Park is one of Toronto's denser neighborhoods with hundreds of families tucked into several apartment buildings in the area. I just want to give my daughter the best opportunities I can, said Battaglia, who is a single parent living with a disability. The new school would run from junior kindergarten to grade 8 and accommodate up to 564 students. It is expected to open in 2033, said Jason Chen, Vice President of Development at Create TO, the city's real estate development agency, in a statement to the Star. The project's original plan included condo towers, but has since shifted to focus solely on rental homes, with affordable housing units included. Flemington Park is home to many new immigrants, asylum seekers, and low-income residents, said Maria Reolin, and that's Reolin, Executive Director of the Flemington Park Ministry, a nonprofit community group providing food assistance, language, and wellness programming. A school is always a great thing, Reolin said. The city has seen that this is a real need in the neighborhood. Podium schools are designed like standalone schools, with separate school entrances and drop-off and pickup spaces, according to TDSB spokesperson Emma Moynihan in a statement to the Star. These models are common in dense urban areas as a way of bringing the classroom closer to homes. Flemington Park was picked as the site for this new school model because it has several schools experiencing significant enrollment pressures. The new and emerging transit lines along Eagleton Avenue and Don Mills Road are expected to create additional growth and pressure for future school accommodations, said Moynihan. This is not the first time Toronto has explored the idea of building schools into other projects. but it's the first plan to get a green light for a school in the base of an apartment building. Somewhat similar school models exist in commercial and mixed-use residential buildings, such as the Downtown Alternative School near the St. Lawrence Market, which sits on the second level of a 6-story building. In 2010, North Toronto Collegiate Institute was rebuilt with 2 condo towers above it. The Sugar Wave project was supposed to be the city's first school and a condo, but those plans were pulled back, as reported by the Star in September 2025. Plans for that elementary school have shifted from the bottom of a residential tower to a 4-story standalone building. The condos in the project were also changed to rental units. Real estate agents told the Star at the time this was related to delays plaguing Toronto's condo development, including inflation and supply chain issues. The TDSB has received $45.1 million to build the elementary school at 770 Don Mills Road as part of the province's Capital Priorities Program. The press secretary for Minister of Education, Paul Calandra, said, noting school boards are encouraged to explore opportunities for podium schools in densely populated areas, shared sites, or joint use facilities to meet students' needs. Parents Sarah May Javier, and that's Javier, moved to Flemington Park with her husband and 18-month-old son Gio roughly 5 months ago because of its proximity to several schools. There are already 2 TDSB and 1 Toronto Catholic District School Board elementary schools in the immediate area. Excuse me. When she heard about the proposed podium school, Javier said she was thrilled because of how close it would be to home. It's more safe, more convenient, she said. If we want to see our son, we're able to easily visit the school in case he needs anything. For apartment residents, it would be like living in any other building, said Maddie Semiataki, and that's Siemiatycki, director of the Infrastructure Institute at the University of Toronto. But he added it's up to architects and planners to ensure noise and traffic management measures are in place, and that there are separate entrances for the residential and school spaces. Podium schools work best when they're on the ground and have access to outdoor space for children to run around in, he said. While some schools might be located in areas where it's really tight for space, a sharing agreement with the city to use a nearby public park is common. The schoolyard at 770 Don Mills Road will transition into a public neighborhood space outside of school hours. When you can actually look at how these buildings are used and designed, you can resolve these issues through architecture and design, he said. Nothing is left to chance. And Sadine Motion is a staff reporter with the Toronto Star. You can reach her at her email, which is SAMOHSEN @THESTAR.ca. Our next article is a Star investigation, and the title is "The Mysterious Cash Surge for Alberta's Separatist Party is Tied to Out-of-Province Donors." And this article is written by Alex Boyd, staff reporter, and Emma McIntosh, investigative reporter. In the spring of 2025, the Separatist Republican Party of Alberta seemed to be making a push. Months before a revival of separatist sentiment would put provincial politics in a headlock, the fledgling party released a 5-point plan for Alberta independence, said door knockers into neighborhoods, and announced its new leader would run in a June by-election for a chance at the seat in the legislature. This effort requires resources, and money appeared to be pouring in. But as the political party's coffers has grown, so too have questions about the donations. In the first half of 2025, donors gave nearly $190,000, a remarkable jump for a party that reported 0 contributions the year before. What's more, the money came from fewer than 50 people, with more than half of them handing over $5,000, the maximum amount allowed under Alberta rules. Who's behind this sudden fundraising surge? A Star analysis has found that at least 4 of the donations appeared to have been made by people not living in Alberta, a violation of election rules that requires donors to legally reside in the province at the time they contribute. The 4 donors appear to have been based in British Columbia, where public records and online profiles suggest they know one another. And a surprising twist, 2 of the apparent donors used to work for the BC New Democrat Party. Republican Party leader Cameron Davies said that to his knowledge, anyone who contributed using an out-of-province address was not permitted to donate. As described on our donor form, donors must be an Alberta resident at the time of contribution, he told the Star. Elections Alberta said it does not comment on parties' financial disclosure, but that it audits donation records to ensure donors meet residency requirements. Political participants and their chief financial officers are responsible for knowing who they can accept contributions from, informing contributors of the rules, and for reporting contributions to Elections Alberta, a spokesperson said. One of the max donors on the list that the Republican Party filed with Elections Alberta is Julian Spicknell, and that's Spicknell. The Star found a Julian Spicknell at the doorstep of her house in Vancouver. Property records show she has co-owned the house there since the late 2024, before the donation was made. She initially denied making the donation, but seemed uncertain, adding, "I couldn't say one way or the other at the moment." She did not answer follow-up questions from the Star. A network of BC political operatives. Spicknell confirmed that she has worked with a Zori Zapryanova, and that's Capryanova, another name among those who gave $5,000 to the Republican Party of Alberta. Zapryanova and Spicknell had previously worked for the same Vancouver credit union. Zapryanova also worked for the BC NDP, according to her LinkedIn account. That same social media profile says Zapryanova lives in Vancouver and has worked for BC-based employers since 2013. Reached by phone, Zapryanova did not directly answer questions about the donation or her residency, but did not deny contributing money to the Republican Party of Alberta. She did not answer follow-up questions sent by email. Zapryanova used a downtown Vancouver address in 2023 when she co-signed a BC car loan. The other loan co-signee is Apollo Chung, who is listed at a different Vancouver address. Chung's name also appears on the Republican Party of Alberta's donor list. He donated the maximum of $5,000. Someone named Apollo Chung is a longtime figure in BC politics who has worked for 3 of the province's parties in the recent years, including the BC NDP, according to 3 sources who have worked for the party. Before that, Chung worked in Toronto municipal politics. His name surfaced in a 2016 audit of a union representing Toronto city workers, which flagged that the local had paid Chung and 2 companies he apparently controlled more than $300,000 for call center activities and tech support work. The Star was unable to reach Chung at the time. For this story, the Star sent him questions via a personal email and work email address, as well as a letter to the address tied to the Apollo Chung, who appears in the 2023 BC car loan. He did not respond. The Apollo Chung connection to the BC Conservatives. As recently as last April, Chung was also listed as executive director on the Alberta Republican Party's website under the name Paul Chung and described as a political campaigner with over 15 years of experience in provincial and municipal policies across BC, Ontario, and Alberta. 2 sources confirmed the photo of Paul Chung that was posted to the party's website depicts the same Apollo Chung that has had a long history in BC politics. He now works as Director of Operations for Carrie Lynn Finlay, the newly elected leader of the BC Conservative Party, according to a screenshot of the BC Legislature's internal directory provided by the BC NDP Party. When Finlay, a former Minister of Revenue under Stephen Harper, lost a federal re-election bid, she pivoted to provincial politics and ran for the leader of the BC Conservative Party. She narrowly won that contest this May and pledged her party to faith, family, and freedom. The same slogan, a common political refrain, is also displayed prominently on the Alberta Republican website. In early June 2026, Chung traveled with her to Calgary to attend a fundraising dinner for Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, according to two sources also in attendance. Finlay, and that's Findlay, has become the most high-profile politician to extend an olive branch to the theoretical independent Alberta, telling the National Post she would maintain economic relations should the province vote to separate. Finlay's team did not directly answer questions about Chung's role in her office and her statements on Alberta's separatism. In an email to the Star, a spokesperson for Finlay stressed that she believes in federalism and is a Canadian born and bred. The downtown Vancouver address listed on the 2023 BC car loan is also on the 2024 corporate registration of a firm called Little Mountain Strategy, which has 3 directors, including Chung and someone named Julianne Spicknell. A fourth donor, who gave $3,000, has the same name as someone who works for the same employer as Zypra Nova and owns a home in Vancouver suburb, according to property records. The Star searched public records and social media sites and could find no evidence that anyone using the same names as the 4 donors had lived in Alberta. The Star also searched political donation databases and found no one with the same names as Zypra Nova, Spicknell, and the 4th donor had made a political donation to a federal or provincial party before contributing to the Republican Party of Alberta. Someone with the same name as Chung made 2 donations to the federal NDP in 2012. Former BC NDP strategist Bill Tieleman, and that's Tieleman, told the Star the apparent crossover between Alberta separatism and British Columbia politics is unexpected, given that some of those involved used to work for progressive parties. The idea of some connection between that kind of a background and separatism in Alberta strikes me as extremely strange, Tieleman said, referring to Chung and Zypra Nova's history with the NDP and other progressive organizations in British Columbia. He said he was aware of both during their time with the NDP, though knew neither well. You get people who switch parties, as we've seen federally recently, he said, but separatism is a very big ditch to get through. The donations dried up after hitting the initial surge. In the months following the donations from Chung, Zypra Nova, and Spicknell, and others who contributed the maximum amount, the Republican Party of Alberta's fundraising ground to a halt. It reported just $6,000 in donations in the second half of 2025, and in the first quarter of 2026, it brought in just over $1,000. The Republican Party of Alberta was embroiled in a scandal this spring amid revelations that confidential voter data originally given to the party had been publicly posted online by a separatist group called the Centurion Project. Elections Alberta, the RCMP, and Alberta's Privacy Commissioner have launched investigations into the breach. Davies, the party leader, is a longtime conservative political operative who was previously fined by the Elections Alberta after campaign finance investigation by the watchdog in 2017. Davies also appears to be tied to a recent political scandal in BC. In April, Elections BC levied a $4,500 fine against rival party BC United for commissioning a website that was critical of Finlay's predecessor John Rustad, That's RUSTAD, and attempting to make it look like the work of disgruntled conservatives, a move Ristad called incredibly Machiavellian. After its investigation, the provincial election watchdog said that a company Davies founded, Sovereign North Strategies, helped make the website, and it's Firejohn Rustad, FIREJOHNRUSTAD.ca. Elections BC did not levy any penalties against Sovereign North. When contacted for the story, Davies did not answer the question about the watchdog's investigation. And Alex Boyd is a Calgary-based reporter for The Star. And Emma McIntosh is a reporter on the Toronto Star's investigative team. You can reach her at her email, which is EMCINTOSH at symbol THESTAR.ca. The title of our next story is Destructing Hornworms Are Devouring Our Ontario Backyard Tomatoes. Here's what to do. And this is written by Celeste Percy Beauregard, Beauregard, a reporter. It's peak tomato season in Ontario, but if your plants are looking worse for wear, you may have the dreaded tomato hornworm. The thick insects are reminiscent of a green version of the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland. But instead of smoking a hookah, these ones prefer to munch through tomato plant leaves, stems, and fruit, beginning from the top down and leaving behind telltale droppings, which one gardener describes as looking like miniature brown pineapples or grenades. If this sounds familiar, here's what to do about them. What are tomato hornworms? This insect can grow close to 4 inches long, with markings that look like small eyes along its smooth green body and a distinctive horn sticking out of its bottom end. In its larva stage, this insect enjoys tomatoes and other vegetables in the nightshade family, like peppers and eggplants. Excuse me. After several weeks of eating leaves, the hungry caterpillar goes into a pupal stage, emerging as a 5-spotted hawk moth, which is a pollinator, if that helps you to feel better about them. Can tomato plants still grow with hornworms? Most tomato plants will regrow their leaves and recover after hornworm damage, but the trick is to remove the caterpillars to prevent continued destruction, according to Facebook gardener groups. What strategies can help deter tomato hornworms? An early sign you may have tomato hornworms on the way is that if you see large grayish-brown moths circling your tomato plant. It could be the 5-spotted hawk moth looking for a place to lay its eggs, said a gardening expert at Satellite Garden Center in Hamilton. Because they are green, they blend in well with tomato plants, but gardeners in some local Facebook groups have had luck using a UV flashlight at nighttime to spot them glowing. Once found, you can either pull them off the plant. Facebook gardeners suggest drowning them in soapy water or treat the plants with BTK insecticide, a natural bacteria available from garden centers. The spray won't work on the moths or eggs, so use it on the plant in the evening once you've spotted the caterpillars, and it will kill them off, the expert said. Other gardeners have suggested making a decoy tomato patch the hornworms can go wild in, or planting borage or basil alongside tomatoes, which deter hornworms and other tomato pests. And Celeste Percy Beauregard is a reporter at the Hamilton Spectre, so you can reach her at CPERCYBEAUREGARD at symbol TORSTAR.ca. The next article title is Liberal MP Sean Chen, CHEN, to resign following car accident last year. And this article is written by Nick Murray of the Canadian Press. Liberal MP Sean Chen says he plans to resign at the end of this week. The Scarborough North MP issued a statement on social media today saying injuries sustained in a car accident in late 2025 have prevented him from traveling to Ottawa as often as a job requires. Chen was first elected in 2015 after serving as the chair of the Toronto District School Board. In a statement, Prime Minister Mark Carney thanked Chen for his advocacy for young people and his work to combat racism. Chen's resignation is the latest in a growing list of MPs vacating their seat this summer. Chen said he plans to resign on Saturday, and this report by the Canadian Press was first published August 10, 2026. Our next article title is Drowning in Bills, Two Sisters Were About to Close Their Landmark Toronto Restaurant. Then Food Network called. And this article is written by Karen Liu, L-I-U, and it's K-A-R-O-N, who is a food reporter. When sisters Jeanette and Joanna Liu, L-I-U, took over their parents' Hakka Chinese restaurant, Yu Tung, and that's H-A-K-K-A, Chinese restaurant, Y-U-E-H-T-U-N-G, after their father had a stroke at work, they never expected Johanna to have one herself just 2 years later in the same kitchen. The stress was taking a toll on both of them. Despite wanting to continue the legacy of the restaurant their parents had operated since 1986, Yu Tung was drowning in bills. The pre-pandemic lunch crowds and the downtown core never returned. More international chains with better name recognition moved in. The expectation that Chinatown plates remained cheap and big enough for leftovers, even during an economic downturn, but the restaurant couldn't keep up with the monthly $30,000 in rent. We were like, is it worth it? Said Jeanette. We thought we were going to shut our doors in January after the Christmas season, said Johanna. We couldn't afford renovations. Then came a call from the Food Network. The sisters had been selected for Restaurant Impossible, Last Call, a new iteration of the long-running restaurant makeover series hosted by restaurateur Jen Egg, and its AGG, and Chopped Judge restaurant Aaron Sanchez. Johanna and Jeanette weren't sure the restaurant would survive until filming began in February, but decided to give it one last shot. Yu Tung became the series premiere, which aired at the end of July on the streaming platform City TV Plus, as well as the Food Network. The first season consists of 13 episodes featuring restaurants across southern Ontario. Excuse me. This is my wheelhouse. I love going into restaurants and going, WTF is going on here, and all the things that are going right and wrong. It's something I'm interested in as a diner and restaurant owner. Yu Tung was chosen as the first episode for a reason. The story of these wonderful sisters is so powerful, and I don't even know the connection with my husband, said Egg, AGG, whose husband and business partner, Ronald Jane, also... Oh, and I didn't even know the connection with my husband, said Egg, whose husband and business partner, Ronald Jean, also had a stroke years ago. Restaurant makeover shows have been television staples for more than 2 decades, but Egg said today's restaurant industry bears little resemblance to one those early series were trying to rescue. Some people have this dream of opening a restaurant, but don't realize what goes into it, that it's always been an ongoing thing. But COVID, it was just devastating to our industry, to a point where I don't know if most people know how much it impacted the industry, along with cost of labor, goods, tariffs, all that compounded with a business that notoriously tiny margins by the fraction, said Egg, on how the restaurant scene has changed since the first restaurant makeover shows aired. People stop going to restaurants and develop new habits that are hard to break. But within that world, there are many people who continue to open mediocre restaurants, so the competition for the middle market, especially in bigger cities, is crazy. Rather than focusing on dramatic confrontations and over the top renovations, the changes Egg and Sanchez made to Yu Tung focused on fixing the restaurant's underlying economics. The biggest lifesaver is decreasing the portions a bit, said Jeanette. We've always been known as cheap eats and value, but that didn't help us. It was an arms race between Chinese restaurants, added Joanna. When our parents ran Yu Tung, one place next door would go $1 less, and then another place went $1 less. They all closed. In the show, Egg stressed more than once that food costs should be around 20% of a dish's price. The restaurant's most popular Hakka chili chicken was at 40%, resulting in the restaurant losing thousands of dollars every year. Sanchez reduced the dish by a few ounces of chicken while telling Johanna and the rest of the cooks to measure out ingredients to reduce food waste and increased the cost from $22 to $24. A few diners complained about the change when the restaurant reopened earlier this year, though if you were to order the same plate in any non-Chinese downtown restaurant, it would be described as a large sharing plate. In the beginning, it really hurt, but what else can we to survive? Said Jeanette. We were taking hits for the last 5-6 years, and that's why we were in the hole. We had to make those changes to keep jobs and serve the community. There was also no extreme home makeover level change to the dining room. The show had only a $20,000 renovation budget. But sitting at the restaurant now, the space does look brighter. The dingy gray carpet has been replaced with an easy-to-clean linoleum. Ripped-up vinyl booths have been replaced, and Chinese murals were added to keep the soul of the restaurant. It's too soon to determine whether the sisters are fully back on track, but so far there is cautious optimism and a newfound sense of pride among the people who depend on Yu Tung's second-generation owners. The pile of bills was stacked. Every day the vendors would call, and we had to negotiate something. But now we're able to write a full check without having to worry, said Jeanette, adding that she's now sleeping better and Johanna is managing her health. Our noodle supplier called in the middle of filming. We were a few months late on payment, and he was like, "It's just a few $1,000s. I will never stop delivering." The relationships that we have with vendors, it's up to us to make sure that we can carry through because they're a small business too. For now, Yu Tung's story continues as Jeanette will be writing a memoir of her family's restaurant with Johanna adding recipes to each chapter. It is slated for a summer 2028 release. And Karen Liu is a Toronto-based food reporter for The Star. You can reach him at his email, which is KARONLIU @THESTAR.ca. And you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article's title is Hoops, History, and Heart: How the Jane and Finch Classic Became a Proving Ground for Canada's basketball talent. And this article is written by Liban Oshman, and that's LIBAAN OSMAN, who is a staff reporter. The calls started coming in fast. Someone at the Jane and Finch Classic was playing like Kobe Bryant. Longtime tournament organizer Clayton Thomas rushed to the Hoop Dome basketball facility near Downsview Park to see for himself. When he arrived, a young prospect hailing from Kitchener, Ontario, already had 43 points, with 4 minutes still left in the championship game. That player was Jamal Murray, then an unknown 15-year-old, but who would be an NBA champion more than a decade later. The Classic, which wrapped up its 48th year Sunday, has been one of Canada's largest and longest-running unsanctioned youth basketball tournament. For generations of players, it's been a rite of passage, the place where reputations are made and the journey to NBA careers begin. Future NBA players like Dylan Brooks, and the Nembhard brothers, Nembhard brothers, Andrew and Ryan, are among those who have competed here. If you prove yourself at the Jane M. Finch Classic, you can prove yourself anywhere, said Thomas, 48 years old, known to many in the local basketball community as Chippy. Nothing is handed to you at this tournament, just like the neighborhood itself. Foul calls are rare in this rugged style of basketball meant to test your limits. When Murray won the MVP of the tournament in 2012, spectators got their first glimpse of a future NBA star in the making. Nobody really knew who he was at that time, Thomas recalled. He had some tremendous potential, and he wouldn't miss. The tournament's roots stretch back to 1978 at Westview Centennial Secondary School. Up until the early 2000s, the tournament was mostly held inside that gym, filled to full capacity, often lacking air conditioning. It's where local hooper Sean Green, known as Biggs, B-I-G-G-Z, clotheslined a Bathurst Heights player attempting a dunk. Chris Webber and Jalen Rose traveled to Toronto to play here before they formed Michigan's iconic Fab Five. The city of Toronto had been running and funding the tournament before Thomas took over in 2005, but due to cost constraints, the city gave it up. That's when Thomas, a community outreach worker who grew up in the Jane and Finch neighborhood, sprang into action and took over the mantle. But his first few years weren't smooth sailing. Thomas was forced to pay out of pocket with grants and sponsorships were hard to come by. A $3,000 hole was the result after his first year. It was never, ever about income, Thomas said. It was just more about the enjoyment of others. We wanted to run a great tournament for others. During that time, the tournament included about 16 teams from across the GTA. It now features more than 100 teams from age groups of 9 to 18 years old. Some teams trekked from Ottawa, Montreal, and Vancouver to compete this past weekend, as well as a team from Jamaica that flew in from the town of Old Harbor. It's international, Ricardo Thomas said about the tournament he's helped to oversee with his brother over the last 2 decades. Everyone's on social media now. When you play in the Jane and Finch tournament and you make All-Star MVP, everyone is seeing, oh my gosh, Jamal Murray got MVP, and they're seeing all of these athletes that are going to Division I. Ricardo Thomas, who runs the local GTA basketball program Locked in Sports, has lost count of the number of kids who have reached back out to the tournament saying thank you for helping them gain exposure to NCAA programs. This year alone, he had 1 kid play for his team and earn 3 scholarship offers. The Classic has also created lasting memories for families. Andrew Nembhard and his brother Ryan first played on the same team here, years before playing in the NBA. Clayton Thomas still cherishes witnessing a young Ryan throw Andrew an alley-oop pass. Approaching its 50th year, Thomas is looking to keep innovating, including adding a one-on-one tournament popularized on social media by local content creator Matt Kiatipis, and that's Kiatipis. The tournament is way bigger than me. When I think of the tournament, I think it's something that's gonna continue forever, Thomas said. And Libyan Osman is a Toronto-based general assignment reporter for The Star. You can reach him at his email, which is LOSMAN@THESTAR.ca. The title of our next article is Canadian Military on Standby to Help as BC Wildfire Losses Mount and Thousands Flee. And this article is written by Brianna Owen of the Canadian Press. The Canadian Armed Forces are on standby to help the wildfire situation that deteriorated rapidly over the weekend in British Columbia's Okankian region, where one person has died, thousands have been evacuated, and there's been extensive property destruction. Defense Minister David McGuinty said BC sent a request for assistance to the Emergency Management Minister, Eleanor Olszewski, and that's Olszewski, over the weekend, and she approved federal help with shelter and accommodation. McGuinty said on Monday that while the province had not formally asked for military help, the Canadian Armed Forces were in direct, constant contact with the BC government and Ottawa. He said the military was ready the moment it received a formal request to act, and the situation was being assessed hour by hour. Areas around Ogunkian Lake were devastated by the Bald Range wildfire that roared into the outskirts of Summerland on the lake's western shore on Saturday, forcing 20,000 residents to flee, and it continues to burn out of control. RCMP said late Sunday that an 80-year-old woman died as she tried to escape her home in Meadow Valley, west of Summerland, while video showed the community of Falder had been largely incinerated. Kyla Gassanio, Gaudiuso, said she found out her home in Falder had been destroyed when she received a photo of the ridge where it once stood, completely engulfed in flame. Gassadio said Sunday that she had not received official confirmation, but the photo left her certain that her home was gone, where the village of around 215 residents was reduced to smoldering ruins. The British Columbia government said on Sunday declared a provincial state of emergency and said property losses were significant, though details were scant. Gassanio described the chaotic scene that unfolded as residents learned of the encroaching fire, and the community began to evacuate, calling it pandemonium. She said she was able to get to safety and was staying at a friend's house in Penticton, but hoped the blaze was contained so that she could see the destruction for herself. I would love to see like a picture or know for sure like what's left on our property, because I'm kind of one of those people. It doesn't really seem real, Gassadio said in an interview. I have to see it to believe it. An update from the BC Wildfire Service on Monday said the fire had grown to about 156 square kilometers compared to 136 square kilometers the day before. The service said clear conditions were expected Monday, and with direct sun could contribute to increased fire behavior. Crews are also mopping up previously burned areas to reduce the potential for reburns, it said. About 10,000 homes are under evacuation in Summerland, Peachland, and regional districts of Okanogan and Similkameen, and central Okanogan and the Penticton Indian Bandlands. More than 3,200 homes are subject to lower-level evacuation alerts that stretch past Peachland to Highway 97C and South Pass Penticton, and it's Penticton, along the city's western outskirts. In the Caribou, there was progress on the massive Pierre Lake fire, about 10 times the size of Summerland fire at 1,468 square kilometers. The Wildlife Service said humidity increased and temperatures were down and thunderstorms were in the forecast with rain expected. It said the fire was expected to be less active and the blaze was fuel-driven rather than pushed by the wind. After a week of hot, dry weather, fuels are highly receptive and the fire continues to spread outward whenever there's fuel to carry it. The Thompson-Nicola Region District downgraded evacuation orders to alerts for the communities south of Green Lake, 70 Mile House, and Hutchinson Lake, moving those in more than 670 properties to an evacuation alert. and this report by the Canadian Press was first published August 10th, 2026. The title of our next article is First Nation Chiefs in BC Call on Carney and Smith to Halt Pipeline Advancement. And this article was written by Fakiha Baig, and that's Fakiha of the Canadian Press. A group that represents numerous First Nations across British Columbia is calling on Ottawa and Alberta's government to halt efforts to advance the West Coast Pipeline, saying expanding the oil industry will accelerate climate change and disasters. The destructive and disastrous consequences of expanding fossil fuel production extend far beyond any single territory, the Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs said in a letter addressed to Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier Danielle Smith. From catastrophic wildfires to destructive floods and rising sea levels, the impacts of climate change are already being felt across this country. Every new fossil fuel project deepens that crisis. The letter is signed by the group's heads, including Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, and it said BC Premier David Eby also has a copy of it. The letter came Sunday, a day after the BC government issued a state of emergency as more than 100 wildfires burned across the province, with one forcing nearly 25,000 people across two communities east of Vancouver to flee. Nearly half of the wildfires were burning out of control. The Indigenous group said it was also publishing the letter on International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples on Sunday. The group said it wanted to reaffirm that it's against the pipeline because government has not consulted and cooperated in good faith with the First Nations, noting government has already developed the project's corridor, named prospective development partners, and is publicly promoting the economic case. Consultation cannot be meaningful if First Nations were invited only to discuss how a predetermined project will proceed, it said. Nor can equity, ownership, loan guarantees, revenue sharing, employment, or other proposed benefits be treated as substitutes for consent. Carney's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the letter. Alberta's Ministry of Indigenous Relations said in an email Sunday that the pipeline would provide long-term benefits for Indigenous communities and create jobs and energy security. The West Coast Oil Pipeline submission is currently under review by the Major Projects Office, which will consult with Indigenous communities as part of determining whether the project is in the national interest, said Press Secretary Karen Folk. Our government remains committed to ongoing dialogue with First Nations and all partners as this work continues. The roughly 1,250 kilometer West Coast pipeline would carry upwards of 1 million barrels of crude oil per day from Bruderheim, Alta, to a port near Delta, BC, for shipment to international markets. The Alberta government is also listed as the pipeline's project's proponent. The pipeline will be owned by Trans Mountain, the Alberta Petroleum Marketing Commission, and Pembina Pipeline Corporation. Ottawa took a step last week towards giving the proposed project a national interest designation under the Building Canada Act, which would allow government to fast-track the pipeline and skirt some environmental laws. The government said it is accepting public feedback until mid-September on the designation. An Alberta government website said it's expecting to receive the designation on October 1st. Following Indigenous consultation, and once all approvals and permits are in place, construction could start as early as September 1st, 2027, it said. Ottawa and Alberta have agreed the pipeline would be conditional on a carbon storage project called Pathways, and vice versa. Pathways, which is owned by various companies, would prevent emissions from increased oil production from entering the atmosphere. It involves a pipeline network that would carry carbon emissions from several sites in northern Alberta to an underground storage hub near Coal Lake, Alta. A think tank called the Canadian Climate Institute said in July, however, the emissions from the increased production that a new West Coast pipeline would enable far eclipse what pathways would prevent from entering the atmosphere. The West Coast Pipeline is among several projects that have been approved or proposed under the Carney's Major Projects Office, which is headquartered in Calgary. Ottawa has said the projects are meant to be of national interest and strengthen Canadians' autonomy, provide economic benefits, advance Indigenous interests, and meet Canada's climate change goals in a rapidly shifting global landscape. The Building Canada Act outlines the project's regulatory pathway. The Conservatives helped the government pass the Building Canada Act more than a year ago, and the government has so far moved 3 projects towards the national interest designation under the Act. Those projects are the Grey Bays Road and Port Project in Nunavut, Nunavut, the Mackenzie Valley Highway in the Northwest Territories, and the Nuclear Waste Management Organization's Deep Geological Repository in Northern Ontario. And this report by the Canadian Press was first published August 9, 2026. Our next article is an opinion article, and the title is, it's under personal finance, the biggest financial move you're not making, asking for a raise. And this article is written by Leslie Ann Skorgi, who is a contributing columnist, and Leslie Ann is a Toronto-based personal finance columnist and a freelance contributing columnist for The Star. When money is tight, our first instinct is to cut back. We cancel subscriptions, downgrade memberships, pack more lunches, hunt for better grocery deals, delay vacations. Those habits can absolutely help. But if you've been with the same employer for years and suspect you're being underpaid or know you are, there may be a much bigger financial opportunity sitting right in front of you. Increasing your income is one of the few financial decisions that can improve your life for years to come. That's one reason economists often refer to your earning power as your fastest financial asset. A 10% raise today doesn't just boost this year's pay. It increases every future raise, bonus, pension contributions, and retirement savings contribution built on that higher salary. In other words, it's one of those rare 6-figure money moves. Unlike cutting one monthly bill, a higher salary has the potential to compound for decades. So how do you know it's time to ask for more money? Know your market value. One clue is that your responsibilities have grown significantly, but your compensation hasn't kept pace. Perhaps you've been taking on leadership responsibilities, trained new employees, or constantly exceeded expectations without your pay reflecting those contributions. You may also find yourself on a stretch assignment that keeps stretching without the promotion or compensation that was originally discussed. Another sign is that you've researched salaries for comparable roles and discovered you're below market. Websites like Glassdoor and PayScale, recruiters and trusted industry contacts can all help you understand what your skills are worth. Try this. Spend 30 minutes this week researching salaries for 3 comparable roles in your city. If you're open to moving, repeat this step for other locations you're interested in. If your compensation falls below the market range, print or save the data. Facts make difficult conversations much easier. Make your case, not your complaint. If the evidence suggests you're underpaid, don't make the conversation with your boss emotional. Make it professional. Schedule a meeting rather than raising the issue in passing. Be clear in your calendar invitation about what you like to discuss so your manager isn't caught off guard. Come prepared with specific examples of your contributions, measuring measurable results, and the value you created for the organization. Instead of focusing on raising living costs or personal expenses, focus on why your performance justifies higher compensation. Try this. Before the meeting, write down your 5 biggest accomplishments from the past 12 months, including numbers whenever it's possible. Did you increase sales, improve efficiency, train new staff, lead a project? Specific results are far more persuasive than general statements about working hard. One of the simplest ways to start the conversation is to frame your ask like this. I'd like to talk about my compensation. Based on the responsibilities I've taken on and the results I've delivered, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss whether my salary still reflects my role. Then stop talking and listen. The strongest salary conversations rarely begin the week before your performance review. They begin months earlier by consistently documenting your contributions and communicating your impact. If the answer is no, sometimes the answer will be yes, and the raise and or promotion is a go. Sometimes it will be a not right now. If your employer isn't able to offer a raise, don't let the conversation end there. Ask what specific goals, skills, or results will position you for a salary increase in the near future. Request a time frame for revisiting this discussion and leave with a clear understanding of what's expected. Try this. Don't leave the meeting with a vague promise to check in later. Ask for a follow-up date before you walk out. A simple question like, can we schedule a time 3 months from now to revisit this, turns an indefinite no into a concrete action plan. If there isn't a realistic path to earning more money where you are, it may be time to look elsewhere. Changing employers remains one of the fastest ways many people increase their income. Although it's important to weigh salary alongside factors like job security, benefits, flexibility, career development, and workplace culture, recent ADP payroll data found that employees who changed their jobs received median annual pay increases of 6.5%, compared with 4.4% for those who stayed with the same employer. While loyalty matters, staying in a role that consistently undervalues your skills can quietly cost you tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your career. Your employer won't always know that you're ready for more. Sometimes your financial future depends upon being willing to say so. Have the courageous conversation. And if your employer can't see your value, don't be afraid to find one that will. And you have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the August 10th, 2026 issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Judy, that's me, and it has been such an honor and pleasure to read to you. I hope you take great care of your amazing selves and have a most magnificent day, and thank you again for listening.